Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Minds, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. We get started as we do each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Ruben Bressler.
Oh, hello.
Aaron Campbell.
Oh, Ruben, you got to go first this week.
See?
I know, I feel so special.
You are selected. And we begin each
You
week
are worthy.
in our top 10 by saying, like, what was the best comment we got on YouTube? And I know it's YouTube comments, but we have chosen to take the pan and swash it around and see what gold nugget comes floating to the top, if you will.
Well, said like a man who's never panned for gold.
Hey,
if gold floats.
No, well, firstly, I have panned for gold in Dollywood. Thank you very much, multiple times.
Okay.
It was great. Well, in Dollywood, yes. It was amazing.
It seems like you're recalling that in a way that, in any case, we'll keep going.
All right, so Ruben, tell us the comment that we chose this week for the winner of Flavor Text and a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com.
Well, this week's winner is Jackson McCreary, if that's your real name. That sounds like a sci-fi, bad guy name, but Jackson McCreary is this week's winner for his comment. Another thing that made M14 so bad is that it came on the heels of M13, which was just fantastic. Acidic Slime, Achroma's Memorial, Deadly Recluse, Duress, friggin' Bolas, Rancor. I mean, it brought the card into Modern. The entire Exalted Mechanic, reprinting the good old Checklands, Vampire Nighthawk, all kinds of awesome stuff. And the earlier M10 and after core sets were also really cool. M14 was just a confluence of disappointment.
Wow.
Hashtag confluence of disappointment. I love that.
Really good.
Confluence of disappointment is delicious. And it sounds like something that my parents told me when I was in high school.
Yeah, that's gonna be my third album released later this summer. Confluence of Disappointment.
That's gonna be our team if we ever get around to doing a team sealed event. We will be the confluence of disappointment.
Yes, we will. So YouTube user Karfsma778. Hit us up on YouTube, on Twitter at Magic Mike's Cast. Let's get you that $50 gift certificate. And if you would like to enter for your own ability to win one of these gift certificates, you let us know what you thought about our top 10 at the end of the show. Let's keep moving. So our honorable mentions are up first. And we have kind of all these. And so it appears that literally 3 of the 4 honorable mentions that I have, someone else has higher up on their list. So...
All right.
Mine are all higher too.
Which is great, honestly, because that means things that we liked, maybe liked by more, by somebody else more, but we thought they were worth mentioning. So my one and only honorable mention that was not mentioned by anybody else was of course the popper highlight of Striped Riverwinder, who uses water attack. It's super effective. I think going to be sort of one of those infamous cards that because it's shrunk down to size, it looks very cartoony. But it is a 5/5 hexproof that you cycle for 1 mana in a format that has a 2 mana reanimation spell called Exhume. That's good, clean living right there.
I heard so many complaints about that card at pre-release this weekend of people who just could not deal with it. It was great.
I mean, there was a 6/7 hexproof guy in the first set, and that thing was ridiculously unstoppable.
Yeah, Scaled Behemoth.
Yeah,
completely unstoppable.
Exactly, and this is just like its younger brother. And again, it's early in the game. You can just cycle it later if you can reanimate it in Pauper. It's going to be fantastic. Just one of my favorite cards. Aaron, tell us about what was there any honorable mentions that were
Nope,
done?
all of mine were higher.
Fantastic. Ruben, yours?
Well, I have technically a total of 6, but 5 of them are the desert cycle. The basic mana desert cycle. That's all 10. Deserts of the Fervent, of the Mindful, of the Glorified, which, by the way, Desert of the Glorified's art, the Sad Crocodile, is just, super insane. It's a shame that it's on a common that will possibly not... time's going to tell if any of these are going to see any play. But I included these because these are the first deserts that tap for colored mana, in addition to the uncommon cycle. But I think that these are super interesting and unique for specifically for limited play, being able to turn on all of your desert needs, like Shefet. You can search for them with Shefet Monitor. Lots of interesting things that can be done with these deserts. And then my last honorable mention is our preview card, Majestic Miriarch, which we thought wasn't going to be particularly exciting for tournament level players, might just be a casual card, and instead has been a topic of fervent discussion amongst all manner of players, including tournament folks.
I've seen it in a couple blog posts,
Yeah, who are trying to come up with these magical Christmas land scenarios of, turn 1 Sacred Cats, Beast Caller Savants, Ronus, Solemn Recruit, things like that to turn on all of those abilities. So Majestic Muriarch is going to be my other honorable mention.
That is very exciting. So, all right, so let's move on here into number 10. Ruben, go ahead and tell us what your number 10 happens to be.
Well, my number 10 is higher on someone else's list. This is the only time that I have a card on my list that someone else has higher, so we'll get to mine later on.
That's pretty cool. Aaron, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is also higher. I have 3 that are higher than they should be.
Wow.
Well, there you go. Well, let me tell you, my number 10 here is Mirage Mirror. Now, Mirage Mirror is really super cool. It's just a cool. It's a cool card because it can just be anything at any time. It just copies whatever. It's exciting because of Dark Depths. It's exciting just because in multiplayer you have a bajillion different options of what this thing can be or should be. I just, it's one of those cards that I don't feel like they could have made a few years ago because they were scared of effects like this at this cost, just for 2 mana to activate it. It's just, the card is amazing in terms of at least casual appeal in my opinion, and I think gets a lot of people excited, and that's why it's my number 10.
I think it's also a little exciting for the show and tell mirror match as a sideboard card. You can drop it in, and it can just turn into whatever they drop in. You can attack with your Emrakul first. You can draw 14 with untapped lands with your Gristlebrand first. If they happen to drop in an Omniscience or something else that's a non-creature permanent, then you can copy that.
Right.
It's a pretty cool card. Yeah, I like that one, and it can be anything it wants to be.
Artifact, creature, enchantment, or land.
It believes in itself, and that's the important thing.
It's just like every pizza is a personal pizza if you believe in yourself.
That's right. Right. Yep. Every Walmart is a local game store if they sell tables and you believe in yourself. And this also follows up with the saying that my dad always says, which is, you can be anything you want to be, but you can't be everything you want to be. And this thing can copy one thing at a time.
It's got to slow down.
Layers might get into issues here. I'd have to see if there's some rules update having to do with being able to layer different abilities on a Mirage Mirror. But I like this card a lot.
All right. So, Ruben, what is your number 9 and why?
My number 9 is Vizier of the True. Vizier of the True is a 3 colorless and a white 3/2 human cleric that has, you can exert it when it attacks, and when you exert a creature, tap target creature and opponent controls. This card is going to be a limited bomb. This is I used it this weekend. Top end. How was it?
It was good. It was very, very good. And so my boyfriend paired it with the Dauntless Aven, I think it's called. So you could get past exert effects by just untapping things, and there were all sorts of neat interactions with that.
That's great. This card reminds me a lot of Elite Scale Guard from Fate Reforged, which, if you recall, Elite Scale Guard was better than most rares in the set. Was very difficult to beat. This reminds me a lot of that. It's a good curve topper for your red-white exert decks. Reminds me a lot of things like Kithian's Irregulars. And both those cards I just mentioned were just complete and utter bombs in their limited formats, and so that's why I'm picking Vizier of the True.
Yeah, Elite Scale Guard, I mean, for its time in Fate Reforged, that card was just actual bananas.
Yeah.
It was just Tropicana right in front of you. So, Aaron, what was your number 9?
So my number 9 is, I've actually named my number 9 because I have a lot of affection for it. It's Choppers! Amity Eternal!
Choppers!
Who doesn't want a zombie crocodile demon? Come on. It's just so cute. I just love that. Anyways, so Amity Eternal, at its worst, it's a 2 and a black for 5/5 with Afflict 3. That's pretty good. That's pretty stacked right there. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you put a -1/-1 counter on it, which means it's terrible in Two-Headed Giant, as I found out this past weekend. We tried to make Chompers work, and it turned into a fun game for my opponents of how many spells can we cast to kill it. So don't play it in Two-Headed Giant. mind. But if you're playing it in a constructed format, if you're playing it in, casual, I think it's a lot of fun. I think there's some neat things you can do with this. There's also some talk of, possibly making room for it in the zombies decks that we've been seeing in Standard. I know Lord of the Accursed is a thing, being able to give this thing menace, because you really want to deal that combat damage so you can remove that -1/-1 counter. I think it also kind of forces your opponent to get creative with their blocking, because you have to ask yourself, if I don't block this thing, I have a 5/5 coming at me, possibly with some counters. Afflict, I'm still going to take 3, I'm still going to lose 3 life either way. How do I want to play this? And so I think there's a lot of context with this card. I think there's a lot of possible interactions with this card. It's freaking adorable, and I love everything about it.
It's just adorable. It's just a crocodile. It's just going to love on it, and it's just going to kick your butt. It's one of those cards that it feels like it's very powerful. If it works, it's probably going to work like gangbusters. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because it gives a lot of control to your opponent, which is always very scary. But if you can offset it with, some of the cards that give it evasion, that's nice.
Yeah.
So here for my number 9. Well, let me tell you, I want you to look at my horse. My horse is amazing. Crested Sunmare is just one of those beautiful, it's a mythic, it's a tribal, thing when it doesn't need to be tribal at all.
Right.
I don't think anyone saw horses coming. Let's just put it this way. No one thought, I know what's coming next for tribal horses. Because other horses you control are indestructible. It's a 5-mana 5/5. And if you gain life, you create more horses. That's insane. I love that.
This was my number 10.
Yeah, it's just big and goofy and silly, and it's amazing.
Most of the talk that I've seen about this card has to do with looking at it as something other than a horse. I think a lot of people are looking at it and saying, horse tribal, what are you going to do with that? But if you look at it on its own as just a creature, there are several life gain effects in this format, and if you can find a way to make it work, you could be in business. And so I look forward to it. I think this is a card that people want to work. I think this is a card that people want to be good. Unfortunately, it does compete with other things right now, so there is talk of it being better maybe post-rotation. But I think the card has a lot of potential, and I think maybe with some, if you put some of the better minds, in the game in a room, maybe they'll come up with something that we don't, but I like it a lot.
I think that ultimately you have, Avacyn at 5 mana is just it's the thing, right? And we're talking about a silly horse that can sometimes make other horses. I'm okay with it being silly and it never being good, but Ruben, is this horse amazing enough for you?
Look, first of all, it's a horse lord, right? It's the leader of the horse lords, which enough said about it already, Lord of the Rings fans, so we're already good on that. But you can stop looking at this as horse tribal already. It triggers on every end step, and it's very easy to gain 1 life just on your opponent's turn if you need to. There's lots of, gain 1 life kind of effects. You're attacking for 10 the next turn if you're able to just gain a measly life during your opponent's turn. Particularly in the black-white control decks, there's just a ton of ways to just gain, little bits of life every once in a while, and being able to get another 5/5 and indestructible creature out of it is a huge deal. This card is pretty great, and also can't be solved by 1 board wipe at that point, since this protects its tokens. So if they cast a Supreme Verdict or something, then the token sticks around because they have indestructible while the Sunmare is on the battlefield. And it's also just a 5/5 for 5. Let's just say you have nothing else. It's still just a 5/5 for 5, which is just a boss on the battlefield. I'm a big fan of the Crested Sunmare.
Yeah, go Crested. So let's move on here to number 8. And I would move on to my number 8, but it's already taken by somebody higher up their list. We'll talk about that later. Ruben, what is your number 8?
My number 8 is Hour of Revelation. That's the white one. Hour of Revelation costs 3 less to cast if there are 10 or more non-land permanents on the battlefield. Destroy all non-land permanents. This card's in a little bit of a weird spot right now because the best removal spells in white are Cast Out and Stasis Snare, which would be counterintuitive with Hour of Revelation. But much like Planar Cleansing before it, blue-white control decks or Esper-style control decks will have to shift their style slightly and change their removal package in order to take advantage of Hour of Revelation. Planar Cleansing, by the way, was a staple in Standard for a long time. Yeah, while it was popular during I think it was M15. And destroying all non-land permanents that includes planeswalkers. And that's a big deal to have a control deck that's able to deal with to have a board wipe that can deal with planeswalkers. So Hour of Revelation has and now I don't think that the cost reduction thing is really going to come into play a whole lot, but you never know. Like, Gideon makes a bunch of tokens. There's a bunch of ways to make multiple extra permanents come onto the battlefield, things like clue producers and things like that.
We're seeing that Monument deck, that blue-white Monument deck can get out of hand.
Perfect against Oketra's Monument deck.
Right.
And so that's why I have Hour of Revelation at my number 8.
It was definitely on my list, and I was excited to see, like, just as 6 mana, I think it's great for what those decks want to do, but man, when you fire that thing off for 3 mana, it's got to feel so good.
Yeah.
It's just got to be, Sunday morning.
And also, this is probably the most exciting commander card in the set, I think. Just because when you're playing with multiple people, they only need to have like 2 or 3 permanents in play each before this thing can get the cost reduction.
So, Aaron, are you seeing a lot of board wipes in your future? A lot of Hours of Revelation?
Well, my number 8 can actually help you come up with fuel for a board wipe. My number 8 is Neheb the Eternal.
Nice.
I don't normally like red cards, but I think this card is beautiful. I think it's scary. I love the flavor text of simply "This is what glory looks like." It's 3 and 2 red. It's a legendary zombie minotaur warrior, again with the prototype soup, or the creature type soup. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you add a red to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. Fun rules fact, damage, in this case, you still gain. So I was concerned because I play Modern, I play Ad Nauseam, and I know that damage dealt does not always equal life lost. And so I was concerned that if my opponent hit me with a creature, is that still counting as life lost for the purposes of this ability? And it does. So even if they hit you with a creature, that still loses life and they still get the mana. There's a lot of talk about this in Commander. There aren't many good mono red commanders, at least I'm under the impression that's the case. And a lot of the EDH types like Benny Smith, or Bernie Smith, I believe.
Benny Smith.
He was really excited about this card, and he had mentioned that, there's a lot of, red is the color of dealing damage and damage spells. And so timing your damage spells to, happen, getting all of this mana, and then fueling your X spells. Red has a lot of good mana sinks like Earthquake, Banefire, Red Sun Zenith, Fanning the Flames, etc. And, you can just get out of hand really quickly. And so I think this card has a lot of things that Commander folks are looking for who maybe thought something was lacking in mono red. It's a good creature in Sealed. We had a really hard time dealing with this at pre-release, and it's just a good flavor card too, seeing what happens to the character of Neheb, who we've seen in the Magic story a little bit.
He's just a total badass. He's just just the BA of BAs, and like all of my the Commander players amongst me in the office, they were just like, this card is nuts. And I will Earthquake for 3 in a 5-player game and get 15 mana at the end of it, or 12 mana or whatever. It's like insane. Comet
turn all your bolts. I
would even play this Commander, and I'm not even a red player. I would sleeve this up if you gave me the right deck.
Right. Comet Storm for 5 against 4 people is 20 mana. Just what's going on? Let's make 20 mana randomly. 4 red to make mana, super cool. The card looks amazing. There's a lot of little tiny words in its type line, but I am also like strangely excited about this guy for its just raw potential. So let's keep moving here. Let's see. We are going to move on to number 7, which I can also not talk about because someone else has my number 7. It's fine. Aaron, what is your number 7?
So number 7 is a card that people were speculating quite a bit about. We had seen this phrase, or we'd had this item hinted about in previous stories, and people were wondering what exactly could it be. My number 7 is Godpharaoh's Gift. We finally figure out what exactly the gift is. The gift being that he's going to coat these folks in Lazotep and sort of make them his army. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of Whip of Erebos, just this constant sort of recursion ability. 7 mana artifact at the beginning of combat on your turn. You can exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie and it is haste. Mind you don't have to exile the token. So like you exile the thing that you're eternalizing, and you get that token, meaning it stays there. So if you're able to put a bunch of things in the graveyard that happen to have neat abilities on them, maybe enter the battlefield abilities, or even just maybe, activated abilities, you can find a way to sort of cheat these cards into play every single turn. This is completely up my alley. I think the card is beautiful. And I like that this sort of answered the question of, what exactly is Bolas doing to, these folks that he's essentially cropping, or, these crops that exist on the plane.
I heard from somebody actually, and a coworker of mine who actually had this in sealed and said it was absolute bananas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
absolutely
believe it.
Unstoppable.
Just every turn reanimate something. Sounds like right up your alley. It also is this is the gate to the afterlife search thing, so it makes that card reasonable in draft.
It works well together. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. And this is another one of these cards that really tells the story of what was happening in Amonkhet, which basically it was like Nicol Bolas was using Amonkhet as a zombie factory, and that's what all of the trials were for. Was like, if this person is good at American Ninja Warrior, then we'll wrap him up in toilet paper and make him a zombie. And then the Gatewatch showed up and was like, that's not cool. And then Nicol Bolas was like, start turning the crank faster. And then
actually, not quite. So the people who failed got wrapped up as the good mummies, and then they got stuck doing all the chores and the handiwork. The people who passed literally just got killed, and then their bodies were coated in the Lazatep, because I believe the planar bridge from Kaladesh has this weird clause about living matter. So the Lazatep, I think, has to purge them of that. But yeah, all the people who failed became the workers on.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
They became the slaves, yes. Because like you were, then the Eternalized were the ones that passed all the trials, because they're the best of the best and the scariest. But take a look at this. I mean, Gate to the Afterlife, a 3-mana uncommon artifact that whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you may gain 1 life. If you do, you may draw a card and then discard a card.
Yeah, and then discard a card.
Which is just whatever, fine, cute, okay, sure. But 2 mana, 2 generic mana tap, sack it, search your graveyard, hand, and or library, and just put this 7 mana artifact on the battlefield. That means for 5 mana, you can just play it. Now, you need 6 or more creature cards in your graveyard. If only they brought back this mechanic that let you discard stuff for really cheap. And they made all these awesome creatures that you can cycle for like 1 freaking mana. Even hexproofs. I mean, like, I don't think this is difficult by turn 5 to actually just fire it off.
No, probably not. Because there's so many 1-mana cyclers. There's your new anime worm that you had in your honorable mentions. Exactly. I mean, there's so many ways to get a billion creatures in your graveyard.
I honestly
like a living end light.
Yeah, exactly. And like, at this. The Godpharaoh's Gift happens at the beginning of your combat step. So if you can make it happen in your first main phase, then you can automatically just start bringing people back on turn 5. This thing, I just think it's really sweet synergy. And if it never works, that's okay, because I think it's going to be super awesome and limited and constructed for casual formats. But like reading that again, it's a lot more exciting now that we know what the other half of the card does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Ruben, what is your number 7?
My number 7, I'm sorry, Aaron, is Ruin Rat. Ruin Rat is a colorless and a black 1/1 with Death Touch. When it dies, exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. I picked this high, not just honorable mention. This is in my top 10 for a number of reasons. Number 1, we've been talking about how we wanted cheap, but also like kind of mediocre grave hate. Yeah. Like, we just wanted to have a little bit of, like, we're not asking for Tormod's Crypt. We want, like, middle-of-the-road, average. I think I brought up the card Awful Snout when I was talking about the kind of grave hate that I want.
Awful Snout?
Like Crypt, Awful Snout. Yeah. Crypt Keeper, kind of like middle-of-the-road, average grave hate. And Ruin Rat is exactly that. The other thing that this card does that's hilarious is it trades 1-for-1 with all 3 of the new gods.
Wow.
Exiling them immediately, which is hilarious to me.
I didn't even
so yeah, nice Scarab God you got there, friend. Here's a Ruin Rat. So I think it's just great. But yeah, I think that 1/1 Death Touch is a card that I will. 1/1 Death Touch for 2 is a card that I will run in every limited format. Rancid Rats was one of my favorites, mostly because the card is called Rancid Rats.
Rancid Rats, y'all.
Rancid Rats, but like a Typhoid Rat, I'll take a Ruin Rat any day of the week.
And look at that sweet bone he's carrying. That's a sweet. That's a,
man.
That's a club of a rat thing. Just a pow.
Yeah, man. He's no joke.
I mean, you really.
Not only will he kill your guy, but he'll exile it too.
You really think this actually has constructed potential, or is it just cool?
It's limited. I don't think that this has
sweet.
constructed potential.
Okay.
But I think that it's a very high limited pick. And we've been asking for a card like this for a while.
Yeah, it's
and
great.
It trades with all of the new gods.
Well, it also trades with all of the ones that you can embalm. You know, like it gets rid of the stupid thing and its embalm version immediately.
Right.
Which is great because that's really
very
annoying.
Important card. There's also a new 2/3 for 3 in white that when it enters the battlefield, it exiles a card. Also very important to have. You know, just like this middle of the road kind of just able to interact with that part of your opponent's game plan kind of card.
Well, Aaron, I'm not sure if you're okay with that at this point.
You know, if he's choosing a card because it's graveyard hate, I'm okay with him choosing that. I would rather he pick that over the Crook of Condemnation. That card is just rude. Like that card didn't need to happen. Like, come on.
But even that is like pretty mediocre grave hate. Like it's 2 mana and then mana to activate. And
but if I had to choose, I'd rather face the rats than the Crook.
Sure.
Okay. So let's move on here to number 6. And number 6 I can actually talk about, as it turns out.
Hello.
Pretty excited about it. Nimble Obstructionist is an amazing card in that it just kind of does everything. Let's make a point here. It's a blue and 2 generic mana for your 3/1 flash flying, has cycling of a blue and 2 generic mana. When you cycle it, you get to counter target activated or triggered ability you don't control. It's a bird wizard, for God's sakes.
Yep.
Like, it's just super sweet. Like, we have not had a 3-power flyer with flash since Vendilion Click that didn't have some weird drawback. Like, all of them have weird drawbacks. 3 mana, 3-power flyers, always some stupid thing that made them suck. And this is just literally all upside. 100% good. It's good coming, it's good going, and it's countering all the things your opponent is trying to do that's super clever and tricky. I think this card is amazing.
I gotta be honest, you know, I know that my experience is not universal, but I did open this up at the pre-release, and I gotta be honest, it was pretty disappointing. Like, maybe it's just against the matches that I faced, but yeah, I didn't. By the time my games were over, like if I was looking at my deck on the way home and I was going, you know, what cards could I have, you know, done without, or maybe what cards could I have done better with? It just didn't really impress me. Like,
this is one of those cards, though, that, you know, it's very similar to Vendilion Click, actually. It depends a lot on the power level of your opponent's deck, right? Because this is going to be a lot more powerful when you cycle it to counter an Either Works Marvel activation than it is to be able to counter an Eternalize activation, right? You know, 3/1 flyers can get outclassed somewhat quickly in Limited with all the 4/4 for 5 flyers floating around, and, you know, various types of air elementals and serendipity, you know, carbon copies. But in Constructed, it's a lot more of a tempo battle. A lot more of what's supporting it. And so, you know, I don't think that a limited environment really shows what this card can do to be able to shine.
Right. I feel this is definitely a constructed card. And I'm not shocked by you saying, like, it kind of not great and limited, like it's good, but I'm sure it wasn't like, you know, win you all the games or whatever, because this is one of those, like, super clever, you know, you're playing around stuff, you're stopping things, you're trying to figure out when you should play it, when you should counter things. You know, this is
think about like Aven Mind Sensor is very, very similar to Nimble Obstructionist.
Right.
It's pretty mediocre in draft. It's pretty solidly, like, you don't really need it to have flash. Like a 2/1 flyer is like okay, and then the ability rarely comes up. Right. Very similar to Nimble Obstructionist. Whereas
I will
Constructed, it's unreal, and I think this is very similar.
I will say the Champion of Wits overperformed this past weekend. I was very happy to see her whenever she came on.
Oh, that's great.
Nice, yeah. That was the card advantage of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Ruben, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is a reprint. There was a time when Strategic Planning was a $60 card.
It's true.
You know, around like 2013, the only copies of Strategic Planning were from Portal 3 Kingdoms, and you needed $60 to purchase one of them. And now it's a common in Hour of Devastation. And if you've never had the honor and privilege of playing a copy of Strategic Planning, boy howdy, let me tell you, that card is great. It is really good. We've had we've wanted a card like Strategic Planning to be playable for a while. Anticipate is one thing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Replaces itself, digs you deeper. But putting the cards in the graveyard is super important, right?
Yeah.
Forbidden Alchemy comes to mind.
It also helps fuel that blue counter spell that's in this set. The one where it's like a mana leak, but it's one more for every card in your graveyard.
Exactly, yeah.
Great synergy.
And then I forget what the card. I think it was Glimpses of the Past or Glimpse from the Past was the colorless and a green from Shadows that was the card that filled up your graveyard.
Grapple with the Past.
Grapple with the Past. That's the one. Strategic planning, very similar to that. If there happens to be a Reanimator style strategy that's viable in the new standard. So I think that this is the kind of card that a control deck just needs. I know it's kind of
the sorcery,
surprising.
Isn't it?
It's a sorcery, yeah.
Sorcery, yeah. But I mean, this is one of the cards that Haruruya put up as one of their first pauper decks. Was using the Sidewinder and using this along with Exhume. Like you're able to find your reanimation spell and put it in the graveyard. Like this is literally perfect for what the Reanimator decks were trying to do in that format. So
yeah, I think that it's very important, not just because it fills up your graveyard, not just because it is able to dig you deeper into your thing, but it's able to do so at such a low cost and do both at the same time.
Absolutely. Aaron, what is your number 6?
So my number 6, and a common thread you might find with a lot of my choices, is that the cards aren't necessarily good, but I like the design space that they occupy, and I commend Wizards for taking risks. My number 6 is Hostile Desert. I love that here we are. We've seen so many different types of man-lands. We've seen the Mutavaults. We've seen the Hissing Quagmires. We've seen the, just when we think we've seen it all, we see a new take on man-lands. Being able to exile a land card to activate it, and in addition to paying mana, is something really cool. I think this is something that might have better chances of being played in older formats where you're doing a lot of fetching and things of that nature. But even going back to what Ruben said, you mentioned your card that puts things in your graveyard, lands and then being able to get use out of those lands again, I think is really cool. We also have the cycling lands that are in this format. This is a way to get some more use out of those too. There's a lot of neat synergies. Gitrog Monster is still a card in this format. Another one of my cards, which we'll talk about after this, synergizes really well with this. But there's a lot of neat things you can do with this card if you really look at what's out there. And I think it's a really neat take on an old favorite, and I look forward to seeing if it sees play. I think the art's really kind of gory. I think it's really, really cool.
Nice. This was my number 7, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I definitely think, and of course this is your number 6, so we're very close in terms of, I think, of what we value it as. I think it's a really great constructed card. Because again, you have cycling lands, you have things you can make your deck really work with it and synergize with it. But it's also one of those cards that like you're doing stuff anyway. Like you're already putting lands in the graveyard, so it's not like you have to make your deck work with it. You're just like, okay, I have lots of abilities to cycle, so I'm going to put some of these in my deck. And late in the game, after you play an hour of Revelation, you can just start smashing.
Yeah, absolutely. Immune to lightning bolt, or not immune to lightning bolt, but doesn't die to lightning bolt. That's cool.
Right. Yep. Yeah, this card is super fascinating. The older formats, Modern and Legacy in particular, I think this is going to be a big player in future constructed events.
It's going to eat a lot of fetch lands, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, basically. And a lot of wastelands and a lot of that. Good.
So
and other versions of itself.
Yes, additional copies. We're going to move on to number 5 here, where I don't have a number 5 as it is higher on someone else's list. So we're going to move on to Aaron. What's your number 5?
Well, I think Ruben and I have the same one because mine says save, and so if it's not you, then it's someone else. Ruben and I both have Ramanop Excavator.
Nice.
Which actually I think plays really well with the previous card Hostile Desert. There are things in this format that let you put things in the graveyard. Ruben listed a couple of them. This is really powerful in that its ability on a creature. This is something that you can Court of Calling. This is something that you can Coco. In an older format, this is something you can Green Sun Zenith. That's really, really powerful. Being a green creature and green having so many ways to look for things. Having this on like a Maverick deck is not so unusual. And especially in the older formats where you have things like the Ghost Quarters, the Wastelands, the more broken lands, if you will, and being able to get those things back, I really, really look forward to seeing what this card is do. And the card's it's really pretty. It's really great to look at.
Yeah, this is Magus of the Crucible, basically.
Yeah.
And it's whenever you can combine a card just so perfectly with a staple of an old card, and in this case I'm talking of Volrath's Stronghold.
Yes.
Both of them rescue themselves from either spot. By the way, there's still that Gitrog Frog in Standard.
Absolutely.
Everybody remember?
It's true.
This card it survives shock effects, which is a big deal. Tireless Tracker. I mean, even Evolving Wilds is like just really, really good with this card. And yeah, I think that this card is very likely to be a player in the green-white company decks that are in Modern. I would be somewhat surprised if someone didn't try to, and then probably succeed with making this a player in Standard with some amount of the sacrifice lands and hostile desert and cycling lands and things of that nature. I just think that this card is spectacular. It's the same cost as Crucible of Worlds, so it might even replace Crucible in some of those decks, like the green splash lands decks that are in Legacy. Probably not anything like the modern deck that uses Crucible, like those modern decks that use Crucible with Academy Ruins. But I think that this has a chance to step into some of those spots. I just think that Ramunap Excavator is a very exciting card.
I feel like I kind of missed the boat on not putting this on my list, and I had it in my honorable mentions, and I was like, well, you know, ultimately Crucible Worlds is an amazing card. It's been in older formats because lands are busted, lands are always good, and if your lands are good, then this guy is good, and turns out lands are good. But Ramunap Excavator itself, I mean, you know, you have Magus of the Crucible, and I think we're going to see a lot of this in play in some of the older formats because you can just kind of fetch and do whatever. And with some of the new deserts, for example, you know, getting those things back and be able to reuse, that's very powerful, some of the sacrifice effects. But yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about this guy, and I want to see this guy succeed. Let's put it that way.
Now, the problem I have with Ramunap Excavator, and that I have with all of the Naga creatures, are that it makes it less likely that we ever get our Lizard Wizard creature type.
Gotta have that Lizard Wizard, don't you?
We just don't have the Lizard Wizard, and I want the Lizard Wizard, but right now we have to live with Naga Cleric.
They came up with a trademarkable. It's a trademarkable term, right? That they get to make themselves, so they can't just call it a lizard. But we are going to Dinosaurville, and
it's true.
Oh no!
Dinosaurs and pirates. 5-year-old
Are they going to be lizards or are they going to be dinosaurs?
They're from.
What's the creature type?
They're actual.
Porque no los dos, yo.
Yeah,
the creature type is going to be dinosaur.
That's what I recall seeing on the on Mythic Spoiler. Absolutely.
Okay, because Tyrannosaurus Rex means terrible lizard.
Come on, entomology.
From what I understand from watching Bill Nye the Science Guy in 4th grade.
Wow. They are actual dinosaurs, like for Dinosaur Avatar, for example. Verdant Sun's Avatar.
Dinosaur Avatar is coming?
There's Dinosaur Avatar is coming. Oh, let me tell you, it's going to be exciting. So, number 4, just like number 5, I can't say anything because it's higher on someone's list.
Evan.
Wow.
Mine is also higher, so I won't be participating in this one either.
Wow.
Ruben,
what's your number 4, buddy?
My number 4 is Unesh. Cryosphinx Sovereign.
Wow, look at you.
Love Unesh. I think it's a great card. Very rarely do they print a legendary creature that I'm happy to draw a second copy of. But the fact that I can cast the second copy for a discount makes it that much more exciting with the Factor Fiction-ish come into play ability that this card has. It's arguable that there is a better 4/4 for 6 mana flyer in this set, which is a little weird, but I think that Unesh is great. It's the legendary Sphinx commander that people had been asking for, the people who wanted to make Sphinx tribal.
It's true.
Mostly people wanted to make Sphinx tribal just because the plural of Sphinx is Sphinges.
Really?
Peach pears. I always think of that Eminem verse of peach, pears, plums, oranges. Vroom, vroom. It's one of his verses. I'm sorry.
Sphinges, oranges. All right. Well, the problem is that most of the Sphinxes aren't mono blue, so even if you make this as your commander, you can't play like Magister Sphinx or Asperia.
You can play something like Shroom or have Asperia be your commander and then do Sphinges.
Right, exactly. Sphinxes
blow the door off the hinges.
Blow the door off the hinges, playing all your Sphinges.
Where's my rap album? Come on, Chapin, we got this.
Exactly. When you play this with Sphinx of Uthun, you dig 9 cards deep into your grave or into your library, which is pretty sweet.
That's Sphinges.
Yeah, that's Sphinges.
Wow, jeez.
We're gonna be binging on Sphinges. I just think that
we're running on both engines. Oh god.
Both engines. A little bit of tinge of an addition of color. But the other thing I like about Unesh Cryosmix Sovereign is that I'm just going to call it Umlaut Benedict Cumberbatch, and everyone will know what I'm talking about.
Wow.
It's like a bunch of syllables in a row. Anyway, I think Unesh is great. The art is beautiful. You're flying Goat Lord, and I think that this card, not only does it have possibilities in the casual formats, but I actually think that as a finisher, people like to have cards that are able to refill your hand of control elements. So that's something like Unesh is a reasonable card to have as your finisher in your control decks as well.
Are you trying to tell me that it's not going to be on the fringes?
No, it won't be on the fringes. A lot of decks might have it might hinge on the fringes.
Man, I'm getting some good stuff out of that one. All right, so we're going to move on here to number 3. My number 3, now that I can actually talk about cards that I got to put on my list, thanks, is Solemnity. Solemnity is
my number 4.
So sweet when it comes to just like hating everything. I hate all the things. Anything countered is not okay. Like it doesn't matter, because ultimately the ability to stop all of infect from just happening from the Dark Depths thing. We already have like a card that works with Dark Depths. Here we really have another card that works with Dark Depths, like screw counters, like stops counters, stops energy, stops all these things. And again, even as we talked about it, it got spoiled, again, to have yet another thing that craps all over Aetherworks Marvel, and they couldn't have just said, you know what, guys, can you just let us look at our Devastation before we have another conversation about the ban list? But no, It's fine. I like that it's exciting in today's like actual standard format, but it's also really exciting in older formats because it can kind of be abused. It's just one of those cards that, and I also noticed that it is a one-word card name. Wizards is very particular. Like when they use one word, a powerful word like Solemnity, they don't screw it up. You know what I mean? They make it a really cool, straightforward, classic, easy to understand, yet powerful ability, and I think they really hit it out of the park with this one.
Yeah, I think the art is beautiful. It almost looks realistic. Like it really looks like that, the artist found a metal mask and sort of took a picture of it. Obviously the timing of this is good, as you mentioned. Counter's Company has been picking up steam in Modern for some time. And, Modern also affords you mana dorks. And so being able to slam a turn 2 Solemnity and saying, nice ballista, brah, right. I think is really, really great. And, going back to, I mentioned liking cards where Wizards is trying new things or taking risks. They're attacking something that never really has been attacked before, counters. There's the Odd Blood Thief, which is in the commander decks, which lets you peel counters off everything. But this is something we don't often see. We've seen creatures get hosed, we've seen artifacts get hosed, we've seen lands get hosed. But to have this sort of currency, this type of effect, that's never really been done before. And so I think there's a lot of cool things you can do with this. And I remember I had somebody play this with the pre-release and didn't realize that it actually helped us, because my opponent, my partner and I, we had creatures that put -1/-1 counters on our own things. And so after that drop, we were like, thanks. And so we were just able to sort of abuse our cards without that drawback. And so there's a lot you can do with this card, and I hope to God somebody breaks it.
please break it. It's so close to being busted. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
What was isn't there the elf that you put a -1/-1 counter on it to untap it?
Devoted Druid, which is currently a thing. Yeah.
Right. So isn't this not literally just infinite mana on turn 3? Am I?
I'd rather not talk about it.
It does do that. There's a bunch of those.
Right.
There's a bunch of creatures that put -1/-1 counters on themselves that this could go infinite with, for sure.
Right, but I mean, like literally turn 2, turn 3. Like turn 2 Devoted Druid, turn 3 Solemnity. I can do something with infinite mana. I hope I can do something with infinite mana. Hope you can get there. All right, so Solemnity is really sweet. Ruben, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is the River Hoopoe.
Wow. That high up. That was one of my honorable mentions.
Now, you'll notice that my list is a lot more limited-centric.
Yeah.
Because I'm planning on playing a lot of Amonkhet block limited, and so I wanted to focus on a lot of the cards that I am going to be drafting extremely highly in Amonkhet limited. And boy, howdy, let me tell you, am I picking every copy of River Hoopoe. Not only is it a relevant body on turn 2. There's so many 2/3s and 2/2s in this set that this just stands in front of. But the ability to gain 2 life and draw a card is everything that I want in the card that I am going to, from now on, be calling the Dirtlebird.
And it's cute.
It's adorable. It's named after a real animal in real life. Most people were like, this is just a weird, why do they have a mohawk bird? Oh my god, these exist in like Madagascar and India, right? This card is really quite powerful and limited. It has flying, so it has evasion if you want to happen to put any of your equipment or enchantments or cartouches on them. Get in for some extra damage. It stands in front of those 2/2s and 2/3s that I was mentioning earlier. Even holds off things like Vizier of the -1/-1 counters, which also goes infinite on turn 3 with the Devoted Druid, as we've seen in Modern recently. Sure. And of course, late game, it becomes a card advantage engine. When you're on the same list of things like, Azure Mage and Cloud Blazer, which are limited all-stars from formats past, as well as, forget the name of the new blue-green legendary Scry merfolk. But there's a new legend that a lot of the folks are using as their Thrasios. There it is. I just looked it up. Thrasios EDH is a huge thing these days. And whenever you're on a list with card advantage engines that are like that, it's a big deal. And so that's why River Hoopu, who, by the way, is named after the sound he makes. If you go look up.
Speaking of the sound it makes,
wow,
they do. That's what you have to do when they come into play.
I'm going to go kind of deep here. So this is a reference like 5 of you will understand. So Christina Aguilera did an album called Bionic, and she did a song with Nicki Minaj called Woohoo, which don't ask what it's about. But anytime I see this card, I immediately want to replace the words to woohoo with whoopoo, and it just kind of makes sense. And so I love everything about that. It's just great.
Wow. I mean, my issue at this point, like, first of all, I think it's a beautifully designed card. It's super cool. It's colorful. It's sweet. I like it because it's sweet. I like it because it is absolutely the Dirtlebird, and that's a fantastic name for it. My problem is that I keep losing to red-white decks that, like, destroy me in, like, 5 turns. And as cool as this thing is, I will never activate it. Everything gets +1/+1, which turns them into 3/3s in that deck. And
that's fair.
It's just so painful.
It is a 1/3 for 2. So it's able to hold off the 2/1s that they play on turn 2 most of the time, or they're going to have to exert their Net Crop Entangler before they want to, or they're not going to get to attack with their 1/1 their Sacred Cat or whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not perfect, obviously.
No, it's
going to have other things,
right.
But it's better than doing nothing on turn 2, and it's better than it's a 2 mana creature with evasion that gives you a late game by itself.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that you could certainly, I think, see the upside. My pain exists in, like, literally I've lost 4 drafts in a row to just, like, the better red-white deck.
Sure, of course.
It was painful. That said, speaking of painful, do we have some pain in number 3, Aaron? We got some awesome black
I'm glad
cards
that you equate me with pain. This is wonderful. So,
wow.
You're not wrong. So my number 3 is Bantu's Last Reckoning.
Nice.
Oh, Bantu, my baby. My baby's gone. My baby's gone. I love this card. I've said a couple times on the show, this is a really neat design space. Taking things that we either are not allowed to have anymore because they've proven to be too strong when they're cheap. Adding this sort of cost to it of, okay, we'll let you have a board wipe for 3 effectively, but there's a little bit of a drawback to it. And I feel like the decks that want this card are going to be more than happy to deal with that drawback. I also love Bantu herself. I was really sad when she bit the big one the other day. I love the art, Victor Mingus, the sort of empty space that exists behind her, as the artists say. I think this is just so great. It was really sad to see Bantu go down that way. And just the way, the card itself kind of talks about this being her last hurrah. Like, she's about to die. She's down. These things are sort of gnawing at her. She gets back up and roars, and then she falls back down. And so this really illustrates that quite well. I love the dude that's impaled on the staff. I love that she's holding a dude. Like, somebody sent me a picture of the zoomed in dude and his face and a text of you're probably wondering how I got here. The card's just fantastic, and this is something I would love to see them explore more. Being able to give us effects that they've decided are too powerful, but maybe adding this bit of a tax to it and letting us just have neat things again.
Absolutely, and I think all this entire cycle was really awesome.
Yes.
I wish they hadn't like kind of spoiled it themselves. They kind of totally spoiled this by themselves, including Nicol Bolas, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. The point is, this was my number 5. I love it. I think it's an amazing spell. I think anything that gets you to harken back to Damnation that's not Damnation, because every time Wizards has printed something that's like, a awesome staple that's going to rock the format and define what standard is going to be about, yada, yada, they want it to be a new card. They don't want it to be like, oh, you brought back Pernicious Deed, or oh, you brought back Damnation, because then it becomes all about Damnation and all about the old card, all about the reprint, and everyone talks about that. They don't talk about the new stuff, so I get that. So when they're able to say, like, look, not only, is it Damnation-esque, but it's only 3 mana, like, that gets the juices flowing. That, that floods the basement, if you will. And as the basement gets flooded and you get really excited, and Bontu just, like, jumps up out of the basement and just, and then come and get you some.
That's why you can't exit. That's why you can't untap your lands, because they're flooded, because your basements.
That's right. You gotta let that stuff drain.
The major river hoopoe.
Gotta drain that swamp with the hoopoe. The hoopoe draining. Oh.
I am sad that they didn't figure out a way to be like, do the effect, then exert yourself, and then put it in parentheses, just so that you can have the exert bonuses on all your other creatures happen, because this is the exerting yourself cycle. I get that. It might have been too powerful to put it, but it is a cycle of rares, so it would have been very unlikely, especially with the Wrath one. Probably not going to get a ton of exert mechanics off of after you've just destroyed all creatures. But in any case, I think that this whole cycle is great, and this one in particular is very exciting.
It was really sweet. It sucks that they kind of took the wind out of the sails of whoever was going to officially preview it, but whatever, I'll take it because the card is amazing. So what is your number 2, Ruben?
My number 2 is Claimed Fame.
Ironic of the stand-up comedian chooses this.
Hey, my claim to
fame
is at number 2. A lot of folks have been looking at this card and been like, oh my god, Jund Death Shadow, which, Jund Death Shadow, obviously putting a Death Shadow back into play or a Tarmogoyf back into play and then giving it +2/+0 in haste for the cost of a Kolaghan's command is a very big deal. I think that this card has a lot of potential in Modern, even beyond just Death's Shadow. I think that right after Snapcaster Mage came out, a lot of the grinders on the Star City Games Open Tour were trying to make it work with Unearth, which is a common from Urza's Legacy. And this is the first modern legal version of that card. Nothing even close has ever been printed. The 1-mana way to bring back a 2 or a 1 or a 0 if you really want to. In addition to the Fame half, which gives it haste again. So something in like a bug Snapcaster Mage style deck. Play a Snapcaster, flashback, claim, get back a Tarmogoyf, something along those lines. In addition, poison is a thing that exists. And claiming any infect creature and then giving it +2/+0 in haste, just kind of out of nowhere, is a big deal. So I think that is probably where I'd start with Claim to Fame in trying to break the card wide open in the sort of the black-green deck that Chris Fennell made popular, and then being able to splash red to give that creature haste until end of turn. So that's where I'd start out with Claim to Fame. I just think it's a super powerful card, really important. Also in Standard, I mean, Relentless Dead is still a card that exists, in zombies. If you want to splash red and give some of your smaller zombies haste and get in that finishing damage as well. So I think that this is a very important card in every format, maybe even back to Legacy, probably not, but certainly Modern and Standard.
I know. I mean, I'm sold. I think the thing is great. I mean, that having not really looked at this card in that lens, just literally to just be value, the Kolaghan's command cost, the ability to split it up. Infect sounds insane with this because, again, you can just literally out of nowhere just boom, boom, get them, and then maybe you just play another one the next turn and you hit them with something else, that has evasion or whatever. The ability for this to get back all the awesome creatures in Modern is it sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, there's just so many, all of the creatures that you play in Modern anyway are 1 and 2 mana. I mean, what are you trying to get back that costs 3? Like, are you really trying to get back? Like, the only 3 mana creature that I can even think of that really sees any real amount of play is like Knight of the Reliquary and now
Ethereum.
and Master of Ethereum and like Ramunap Excavator is going to start seeing play. But those aren't red and black. Like everything that's in these colors, you're going to want to get back anyway. So this is literally just put any creature in your deck back into play. And oh, by the way, sometimes give it haste.
That's awesome.
In addition to just the Death Shadow, attack with a 10/8 on turn 4 or whatever after they've Fatal pushed it. So this card is just super insane bonkers.
It seems really scary, and Aaron, you have to be in favor of bringing things back.
I sure am.
It's got to be high up on your list of satisfying cards.
Definitely my number 2. Is it my turn? Do I get to do number 2?
It's your turn. You can do number 2.
I don't want to cut anyone off.
By the way, claim to fame, Legal and Tiny Leaders, if anyone still plays that format.
No one plays your weird Commander format that they sound like they invented just to sell some cards.
Just checking.
I swear to God. Man. That's so weird. It felt weird.
This is Ruben's way of fostering a more inclusive community, so we'll allow it. So my number 2 is a card that was spoiled as we were live. We were recording our show on Wednesday. Another content creator who we love revealed this as we were going live, and I was checking Twitter, and I saw this, and I freaked the hell out. And I wasn't even done reading it. Like, it was a bomb that kept exploding. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. Not done. Exile target creature card from a graveyard, create a token that's a copy of it. It is now a 4/4 black zombie. Do you see me? Like, I can't feel my face. Not even done. When the Scarab God dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next upkeep. The next end step, my number 2 is the Scarab God, because, oh my God.
This was my number 4. This card does everything.
This card, do you remember when you were little and like you would get really excited about something and you'd have your one smart ass friend that'd be like, why don't you marry it? I would marry the Scarab God. Like, it is everything I want to be doing. I have a friend in my local commander pod who tried using this card before it even came out. He's like, do you mind if I test my Scarab God EDH deck? And it was disgusting. It's just so great. The drain ability creates a reach, for otherwise zombies are considered to be aggro decks, and sometimes that leads to board stalls and no way to really break that. Scry, again, zombie decks being aggro decks tend to lack card advantage, and being able to scry and get exactly what you need is really, really powerful. And then the sort of recursion of being able to, eternalize anything you want to. The card itself is creepy as hell. I just love everything about it, and it's just everything Aaron Campbell wants to be doing in the world.
It's amazing, and I've already talked to some people who have been using blue in zombie decks to great success. And this is just literally exactly what they want. Like, this was everything you wanted it to be. The ability for them to just drain every turn, that's incredible. And if you kill it, it's coming back. And if you're killing, you better have a plan. I mean, like, I think they gave Wedge an awesome spoiler because holy cow, this is just like, this is one of those cards that Wizards is like, look, we got to give you cards in every set that constructed players are going to go nuts for. And this one just like checks every single
box.
Yeah, shout out to Wedge.
I love the Scarab God. I think it's great. I knew we were going to talk about it on the show, so I didn't put it on my list.
You didn't put it on your list because you knew we were going to talk about it. That's great.
Yeah. Hey, we want to talk about the maximum amount of cards, right? So that's what I thought. I had Ruin Rat on my list to replace all the gods, just to point out.
Wow.
Thanks, Rubes. You're a good friend.
That he fights the rat, the bone rat guy. But yeah, Scarab God is obviously insane. I mean, there's nothing bad about the card at all. It turns everything in your graveyard into gas. It is a 5/5 for 5. It gives you the ability to dig for more gas while draining your opponent while never having to attack into your opponent's Ruin Rat. It's amazing.
That Ruin Rat
card's great.
Just holding it down. Just
holding it down.
Doing the Lord's work. All right. Or the God's work, if you will.
Doing the God's work.
That's right. So now we go to my number 2 here. And let me tell you, there's a parade, and that parade is made of kitty cats. And The Kitty Cat Parade is led by Pride Sovereign.
Wow.
Pride Sovereign is my number 2. It's so cool. I love it. I love the things you can do with it. I love how it curves out. I love how it's super scary. I love how green white cats could be a thing. It's just, I was like, this is another one of those cards that I'm just like, I came from a world where creatures really sucked back in the day.
Yeah.
And as they've slowly gotten better and better, you kind of keep hitting these watermarks where you're just like, my God, you have to only pay what to get what? Like this is one of those cards where you're like, really? It makes 2, and then all of a sudden it makes itself bigger, and it synergizes with itself. It synergizes so well with all the other cats. Like there's some super cool cats in Standard. It leads the Kitty Cat Parade, y'all. That's what it does. That's where it's at. So it's in the front, I mean, like it's fantastic. So you weren't ready for it. That's my favorite part.
Yeah. You just like it because it can spawn more than you can.
Wow. Hashtag 5 kids.
Hashtag 5 kittens.
5 kittens.
Hashtag 5 kittens, y'all. That's how it works. That's a good one. I like that one.
I do love this card. I think that it's hilarious that on the one side we have red, blue, and black nicol bolas, and on the other side we have green, white cats. Like the cats are fighting. Like that's they're in charge of the other team. I guess that's really funny to me. Also, you were talking about constructed. Boy, let me tell you. Turn 1 Sacred Cat, turn 2 Metallic Mimic, naming cats. Turn 3 Pride Sovereign is no joke. That's a beatdown of a Kitty Cat Pride Parade.
What are the odds that we're going to see that in week 1 of the SCG Open? Like,
I hope so.
Come on, Todd Stevens, don't let us down.
Oh my God, that's all.
Johnny used to be in charge of the Kitty Cat Pride Parade, but he didn't come to Amonkhet because he's smart and stayed away.
He's like,
because this place is dangerous, and also cats don't really like it in the sandbox. It gets all mad at it in the fur. So
and it's so coarse and it gets everywhere.
Yeah, it gets everywhere. I mean, places that the cat didn't even know it had. And but yeah, going back to Pride Sovereign, that card's really good. I mean, you make a good point about you hit these watermarks every once in a while of like, really, how did they really think that was okay? And when you look at it, like, I guess it's okay, but like, man, that is out there, and this is one of those.
It is terrific. Aaron, are you feeling the kitty cat love?
Absolutely. I love the Photoshop. Somebody had made an image of the Pride Sovereign with the rainbow flag transposed over it. I thought that was really great. Nice. A friend of mine actually opened the Regal Cat with this one at their pre-release and specifically wanted me to tell you because they were like, that's going to be everything Evan lives for. I also saw a meme of tag yourself of like which cat you are in the Pride Sovereign picture.
Yeah.
I decided that I'm the cat on the far left, which is saying, I'm not necessarily going to claw your eyes up, but if you start talking crazy, I will. That's the cat that I personally identify with. So yeah, it's a fun card, and I think it was revealed during Pride Month, and it's just great.
So Aaron is the I will cut you cat.
Yeah,
like I'm the cat. I'm here for that, but I'm not opposed.
I'm the Michael Scott cat in the foreground that's looking at the camera. Like, can you believe these people?
True.
For real. Oh man, and I'm just like I'm one of those just itching to go. Just whatever. Let's just do this.
Yeah.
Standing right next to the lion, just like, all right, when are we going? Somebody say hike.
If not the Pride Sovereign itself, because hashtag 5 kittens, y'all. All right.
Yeah,
it's a full litter box.
That's a wow. She was just waiting on that one, and she was just like, shoot. Oh my God, we did it, everybody. We did it.
I guess the whole plane.
Wrap it up. We're going
is
home.
a bit of a litter box.
Right.
Woo! All right, so we're going to turn the corner to number 1. My number 1, which may or may not be the same as everyone else's. I have no idea. But Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh.
Hello.
Is the number 1 homeboy. He does everything. Planeswalkers with 4 abilities by themselves are just fantastic. Yeah, Chandra didn't blow us away or anything, but she was damn good, and she's still good, and she's still playing. Yeah. It's not like this was a bad card. Nicol Bolas, God of Pharaoh was just like, they wanted the wet dream of all Grixis Planeswalkers. What do you want this Planeswalker to do? What can't your deck do very well, or what can it kind of help you reinforce? And, the fact that they're exiling cards and playing free spells, the fact that they're getting rid of their opponent's hand when it's the mirror match, the fact that it's killing whatever's on the battlefield, which is great, and Otherwise, you just minus 12 and get rid of everything they have. Like, these are the things that all the Grixis decks want to do. There's lots of tools to do all the other things, and Nicol Bolas just comes in there. It's a sweet card. It's an iconic card. They wanted it to be good. I think it is very good. I think it is going to be a major player in Standard. We're going to see 7 mana is a real thing. Yeah, it's a real cost, but man, the upside on this thing is absolutely amazing. So for all the Shaheen Saranis out there, you know, this Planeswalker's for you. You just crack open a cold God Pharaoh and you just slam it down, and then they're dead. And that's how it works.
Cracking open a Bolas with the boys.
Mm-hmm.
So, speaking of cracking one open with the boys, so Ruben gave me a very interesting compliment before we got started, and we didn't really have a pre-show for this. So, unfortunately, we don't have a pre-show for that. So, people really won't get to see that. But Ruben basically said that him and Evan love the game, everything about the game. I tend to only like 25% of the game. Like, I like what I like. But the things that I like, I freaking love. And Ruben actually kind of complimented me about that. He's like, you don't like a lot of things. He's like, but what you like, you freaking love. And there's nothing more I love than dead things. And specifically things that used to house dead things that are just looking for more dead things. Cracking open a cold one. How about cracking open a hollow one? My number one is Hollow One. I'm very excited to test this card in Vintage. Vintage Dredge hasn't had any new toys for a while. The idea of casting this thing for free really, rings my bell. Even just things like Street Wraith. Street Wraith is a thing. Faithless Looting is a thing. Cathartic Reunion is a thing. There are other ways to cheat this card into play. And I look forward to trying every way that I can. I also just love the flavor of it. I like the idea of just a walking sarcophagus that's freaking lonely. And just wants to put someone in it. I think that's great. I think the art is fantastic. I love the flavor of it. I love the, finding new ways to do cycling. I was reading Mark Rosewater's, for the first couple of weeks after a new set, he likes to, mention certain cards and what led to their development. He was like, we've had cycling, a couple times now, and just when we think we've done everything we can with it, we've introduced this. And I think it's a really novel thing. I think it's really gutsy. And I hope that this sees plays somewhere, and I hope to be the one playing it. I think it's just great.
It's weird when I look back at the art now. I feel like, and because, I'm in Orlando, there's a lot of tourists. Yeah. This looks like that classic, is that the drugstore we've been looking for because I need some Tylenol? That's that look on the dad's face.
We're all out of kitty litter.
Are you? Is that a CVS? Because my head's killing me. Like, he's just. It's like he's almost found it, but he's not found it, which happens all the time around here. It's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
And beyond that, clearly this to me is just all Aaron Campbell all the time. You play it for free off of Bazaar Baghdad. Like, you can't get much better than that. Just plop, plop, and then see if they can actually deal with it. Yeah. This card has lots of potential. Another one of those cards that feels like it either works or it just doesn't work. But when it works, wow.
We're going to try.
The fireworks will go off. The train will pull into the station.
The basement will be flooded.
The basement, by God, it'll just whoosh in, just whooshy.
Yeah.
Ruben,
this was my number 10. I'm really excited. Yeah. Hey, this might be our only card that's on all 3 lists, right? Because I don't have Nicol Bolas at number 1. Spoiler alert.
Wow.
Yeah, Hollow One's super exciting. Even if you just have the regular old cycling for 2 colorless mana, just normal, average, everyday cycle cards, and then just play this after you draw 2 cards on turn 5 is like perfectly fine. It's like it's a 4/4 for 5 still. That's okay. It's not great, but it's reasonable, and that's the minimum bar. From there, it just gets better. You get it for free on turn 1. Like you said, Vintage Dredge has always had this trying to, what do we do after they side in 7 to 8 hate cards? Well, we can try to do this other random beatdown strategy, or we can try to do this other combo deck that we sideboard into. This is just a really solid thing that already works with a lot of the things that you're trying to do, primarily, which is mulligan into Bazaar of Baghdad. Mm-hmm. And so when your opponent is like, haha, turn 1 Leyline of the Void after I mulligan to 5, and you're just like, activate Bazaar, here's 2 4/4s, and then they're like, Well, okay.
See, that's when you strap in the Rafflecopter and you're like, and you just like fly up all around there and just drop the bombs.
The problem with vintage Dredge has always been, what do we do after sideboard when all these hate cards come in? Do we answer the hate cards, or do we try a different strategy, or do we do something different? And this doesn't force you to do anything different. You just keep all of the same. Like, if they don't have the hate cards, then you just dredge them. And if they do have the hate cards, then you just have hollow ones in your deck, which are still just reasonable cards to have to beat them down on a reasonable clock. I think this is a really exciting card, not just for vintage, but also for modern. You have things like Faithless Looting, lots of ways to discard lots of cards all over the place. The card's great.
Card's sweet. So, Ruben, you gotta close this out here, buddy, with your number one favorite card from Hour of Devastation.
They finally printed the red Disenchant. They finally did it, guys. And it's called Abrade. Abrade, for me, is my most exciting card, because this is the card that I saw and was like, red's playable, guys. They did it. They made red a playable color again. It's not Lightning Bolt, all right, which has been the mantra of Wizards of the Coast since 2011. But this is the closest thing that we're going to get. Like, this thing is great. It kills every creature that's relevant in Standard except for, like, Ishkanah, which cycles out in 3 months anyway. And Ishkanah's, like, not even that relevant anymore anyway. It kills everything you want it to. It kills Torrential Gearhulk. It kills everything. Obviously, it kills everything with 3 toughness. This is Fatal Push for red, guys. This is it. Kills all the vehicles in Mardu vehicles. Kills all the drivers in Mardu vehicles also. Yeah. Gets rid of every green creature that's relevant except for, like, a Delirious Grimflayer, which also cycles out soon. Abrade is just everything that I want in a card. And I'm so glad that they printed it. It's perfect. This is my card. This is number one. You said Nicol Bolas does everything. Abrade does everything.
I actually had my honorable mentions were the modal cards, the black one, the blue one, and the red one. I think they're all fantastic. I think that they all, we've talked about this before. They all kind of do specifically what control decks and even mid-range decks want to be doing. The problem with certain cards, like Mana Leak, is that they're dead, they're terrible in the late game, and so you have the versatility of, okay, if you can afford to cast those, fine, I'll just dig and find goodies. The black version, being able to exile a Torrential Gearhulk if we need to, or if you're facing down a control deck and you just need to strip cards from their hand, you can do that too. The red version, it's so versatile. Again, you can kill a Gearhulk with this, you can kill a vehicle with it, or you can just use the 3. This is what I think a lot of decks have been missing in this format, and I think they're just all fantastic. I just love that they're even a thing.
It's one of those.
The fact that this is coming into a Standard where Kaladesh and Hour are going to be together for so long is huge. Yeah. I think that this is the perfect time for Abrade to show up, is the other thing.
This is the type of answer that we want to see for the previous block that they weren't doing for Battle for Zendikar and to Shadows into Kaladesh. We're just like, Aether Revolt should have had the sickest graveyard hate like ever, but had basically 0, and that was a problem. Well, now we're answering all the problems that Kaladesh could very well be. I mean, again, think of all the hate cards they had against Energy in this set, and they banned Aetherworks Marvel anyway, which was kind of amazing. Even this card, again, it's crazy to me. I'm like, this card does everything. I had all 3 of these cards, kind of sort of as a group in my honorable mentions, because I think individually I love them, obviously, but I think as a group you can really see Wizards was like, here, Grixis control deck.
Tie the room together. You're right.
Yeah, this is what you all wanted. This is your versatility. This is your options. This is your power. This is your mid range. Just go nuts. And I love all these cards. And I agree. If you're going to choose one, I think Abrade is going to do the most damage. In terms of the most impact.
Yeah,
and also do the most damage because it's the only one that does damage.
You're right. That's damage. All right, so
mark that one down on my.
So that is our top 10 favorite Hour of Devastation cards. We're going to move on to our Day of Judgment, where we can talk smack about each other's lists, which I don't think a lot of our lists were surprising. I do think Ruin Rat was kind of the booby prize of the list.
Look, friends, they can't all be winners, all right? Yes, I'm pretty sure my list.
They literally can all be winners, but you chose not to.
If we have any artists, or if we have anybody who's watching who's artistically inclined, I would love to see a Reuben rat. If you could somehow make that happen,
wow,
like a little Reuben rat just gnawing on the bone, I think that would be delightful. So come and tag me if you're able to do that. Anybody, just throwing that out there.
I certainly agree that I had the worst of the 3 lists. Ruin Rat was for meme-tastic purposes. I mean, it is really good in limited. And again, my list was really focused more on limited, trying to be a little, because since I'm the one that I think of the 3 of us that plays the most limited, particularly because I play Amonkhet limited like it's my job. Because I just love that. I love that block.
I've played a lot of Amonkhet limited. For what it's worth, I have played a ton.
Well, I do. I kind of want to defend you a little bit, Ruben. I mean, I don't know if maybe defend is the wrong word, but I think we can all agree that, in all honesty, it was very difficult to make these lists.
Sure.
There've been a couple of articles about how the set isn't as powerful as some people were hoping, and to be fair, there weren't many cards that I was through the roof about, and I think we all agree that a lot of our lists didn't even really start until like 3 and 4. There are cards that were cute, but we weren't like crazy about, and this was actually really difficult to do. I think we all had a hard time finding things that we were just stoked about. And even the cards that we chose, we didn't necessarily choose them because they're good, at least in my case. Even though I didn't like a lot of them, I still like what they're doing. I still like the chances that they're taking. I still like the opportunity to do things like that in the future. Even if I don't necessarily like the card itself or would play with the card itself, I like what they're trying to do with it. And that's sort of where, if I couldn't find things that I love, I could at least find things that I love what they were trying to do. And so that's the way I kind of covered by that.
I also want to give one quick judgment that none of us had Overwhelming Splendor on our list. Was a little bit of a misclick, probably.
I mean, it's cute, but it's like it's very, very niche. Where it's like I just don't see it being like mono white prison. Okay, great, but I don't want to encourage people to play that.
Sure.
Like it's cute. I mean, first of all, like I had a legitimately tough time once I went to the set. I wrote down all the cards I liked, and I went back and I was like, oh my god, I have like 20 cards. Like, how am I supposed to just cut 6 anyway?
Yeah.
So there was that problem, but I think that's a very good problem. That to me says that the set is good when I'm able to pull out that many cards that I'm like, these cards are fantastic, and
absolutely
all their own little ways.
I think the set is super interesting. I haven't been involved in many of the discussions on power level, but I mean, there's just so many interesting, neat things that they're trying to do in this set. That if they don't work out, oh well. But that's just a thing that's going to happen. So strikes and gutters, ups and downs. You're going to have some misses. But I think that overall I'm pretty happy with Hour of Devastation.
Yeah. I was most surprised. I think in a few ways. One, hashtag Reuben Rat. However, Unesh being so high up, I thought was really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, I love Unesh. That one was not meme-tastic. I think that card's great.
God Pharaoh's Gift was another sort of like, wait a second, this is amazing. You don't get rid of the token at the end of the turn or anything. You keep that token.
Right.
Yeah.
Every single turn you get to do that, which is really great.
Horse Lord being so high for you guys was interesting to me. I thought that Crested Sunmare was a weird one, but
it's just fun. To me, it's just a cool,
It's fun, Lord. And like I said, I think a lot of people are looking at it in the sense of it's a horse, and I think if you look at it as just a white creature, I think it has a little more potential at that point.
I just look at it as a horse, of course.
Yeah. If ever there was, what is it? If ever there was, there is, there was. Yeah.
Well, I feel like, there are so many things we could have discussed. Like, there's a new Flametongue Kavu in this set. They reprinted Unsummon. Like, there's just so much that we could have gone over that would have been reasonable top 10 picks. It's just that Ruin Rat just isn't a reasonable top 10 pick.
All right. So if you would like to tell us what you thought about our lists, some insight that you may have, we want to reward you in our comments section. We will give you a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com, our awesome sponsor, for your time. So tell us what you think down below. We want to know. We want to hear it. If you guys have any tips or feedback on the top 10 list, obviously this is still a work in progress. We're trying to figure out exactly the right way to do things. Again, these thoughts, all of your feedback has been taken into account. We still like to hear it, but let us know down below. But that ends another top 10 list for Magic Mike's. Aaron, thank you very much for hanging out.
Thanks for having me.
Ruben, thank you for being here, buddy.
Thank you.
And we're going to move on to our final slide. And that was our top 10 favorite hour of Devastation cards. We want to hear what you think, and we'll celebrate that by giving a random commenter. Oops. Oh, this is just all fucking wrong.
A random cotton picker will give $50.
Herb Durrell's. Okay. All right. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Our sponsors from Patreon.com and CoolStuffInc.com. My co-hosts Aaron and Ruben, you guys for watching. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Visit our website at MagicMikesPodcast.com. That exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do all the things social that tell people that we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv/MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, on Reddit at Reddit.com/r/MagicMikes, and on Facebook at Facebook.com/MagicMikes. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week for another top 10 episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.